Albert Breer back here on the show from Sports Illustrated. Good to see you, Albert. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing, Rich?
I'm doing well. What's your opinion of the schedule? What do you take away from the schedule being released on Wednesday? What's your takeaway?
Well, I guess the first thing is the league doesn't care anymore about putting teams on the road 3 weeks in a row or playing teams in the middle of the week. I mean, it feels like the gloves are off now. That's my main takeaway. And I know you've obviously spent a lot of airtime talking about the predicament the Jets are in, and having to go to San Francisco for the opener. I think there's like the cruel storyline twist there of having to play Monday night of week one, and then coming back and playing on the road again in week two. That's a tough break when you think about the west to east travel. You're not going to be getting back until at some point on Tuesday morning if you're the Jets. So they're not the only ones, though. I mean, the Chiefs, same thing. Like, if you look at their schedule down the stretch, it's the Wednesday, it's, playing on Black Friday. It's, all of these games that are jammed into these different spots. And, it's gonna be really interesting to see what it does to the quality of play down the stretch. Cause, you do hear players and having to, especially the older guys, having to deal with, coming off of a short week and how that can take a little while to get your feet back underneath you after playing, so many games and in such a truncated amount of time. Well, consider this, those four teams that are playing on Christmas Day, it's the Texans, the Steelers, and obviously the Ravens and Chiefs playing on Christmas Day for the second straight year. They're going to be pulling a Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday turn in weeks 15, 16, and 17. So this isn't in the middle of the season with, a bunch of time to recover from it. I just think it's going to be fascinating to see how all of that plays out and what sort of effect that might have on the quality of play as we get down the stretch. Because, again, clearly the NFL has shown here that when it comes to, treating everyone with kid gloves, with these sorts of things, those gloves are now off.
Yeah. Tuesday's the only day of the week the Chiefs don't play a game on in 2024. And if they win on 5 of those days of the week, they'll be the first team in the history of the NFL to win on 5 different days of a week in a single season. That's never happened before. The last team to play on 6 days of a week in a season were the 1927 New York Yankees, which is the actual name of an actual team. And of all times to be called the New York Yankees, 1927 is one that kind of leaps out at you. So that's, and you mentioned the Jets, though, too. They put them on national television, 7 standalone games when you include the London game. And I'm assuming that means that you can't flex into their games later on in the season. And flexing is going to be difficult anyway because, of what you pointed out. There's going to be 4 teams playing a Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday. There's just a lot going on. But I'm assuming if there's a partner in Netflix saying, hey, we'll give you $150 million for 2 football games, the answer is going to be yes, since the players do get a cut of that,
Yeah, and I do think part of this is just the demand for football. And look, I think part of it's probably the league looking at it and saying, like, last year we lost all of these quarterbacks, right? And people have complained about the quality of play for the midweek games forever, but it's had no effect on the ratings. You know what I mean? Like, so if it's not affecting whether you and I sit down on the couch or even the casual fan sits down on the couch and watches the game, well, then what's stopping them from making more money, And, I think that's all a part of it. I also think a piece of this is just, how valuable these rights have become. And it's interesting, Rich, like if you go back and you look over the years, there was a point where one package would cost way more than the other package, right? So let's just say, just to throw dollar figures out there, let's say I spent $25 for the Sunday night package. I spent $20 for the Sunday afternoon packages. I spent $15 for the Monday night package. I spent $10 for the Thursday night package. Well, if I have the Thursday night package and I spent $10, I can't complain about the guy who spent $25 getting much better games, right? But when those numbers get a lot closer, and now maybe it's $22 versus $25, now all of a sudden the guy who's got the Thursday night package or the Monday night package has a real beef. And so I think so much of this comes down to those economics, and I hope people's eyes aren't glazing over when I explain it that way. But I think that's part of what it is, if you're asking, Amazon to pay what it paid for Thursday night, if you're asking ESPN, ABC, Disney to pay for Monday night, what it paid for Monday night, well, you can't give them second and third tier games anymore. You have to give them something better than that. It's part of the reason why ESPN's getting a Super Bowl now, So all of this, I think, is part of the business of the sport, and how the rights fees have escalated, not just for the premier packages, but for packages across the board.
Albert Breer, Sports Illustrated here on the Rich Eisen Show. What'd you make of the Goff deal?
I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's the price of doing business in the NFL at that position now. And he has been so important to them. And I'll tell you, Rich, like, this is one of those where, and I don't know if your reaction was this, but my first feeling on this was good for Jared. I felt awesome. You know what I mean? Like, yep. I know you've talked to him. He's such a good guy. And that was such a messy divorce in LA. And it obviously worked out for the Rams because they get Matthew Stafford and they win a Super Bowl. And when you win a Super Bowl, period, end of story, you win, right? So the trade was a success for the Rams, no question. Jared was seen as a salary dump in this thing, and I don't think any of us would have sat here 3 years ago and thought Jared Goff was even going to be on the Lions roster, much less becoming the second highest paid player in the history of the sport. So my first reaction was good for Jared Goff. That is awesome, because everybody else saw him as a salary dump. I can tell you, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, from having talked to them at the time, they never saw it that way. Holmes was with him in LA. Dan Campbell had the experience of having competed against him in a conference championship game. And, so they believed in him. They invested in him. And, it's just another thing that the Lions got right. Oh, by the way, like those picks that came over with Goff, I mean, you're talking about like those being a big piece of putting together draft classes that had Aiden Hutchinson and Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta and Brian Branch and Jahmyr Gibbs and Penei Sewell. Like the job they've done putting together the entire team, I think has been magnificent. And, very clearly they got the quarterback thing right. And I think he wound up being even better than they thought, which is reflected in the contract.
Who's next then? Who's next up? Is it Tua? Is he next up?
If I had to guess, I'd say Jordan Love. I don't think it'll be Dak because things always take a while with the Cowboys, So I would say it would either be Tua or Jordan Love. I don't know why I just have this feeling that Jordan Love will be sooner. I just do. The Packers have always been aggressive in getting in front of these things. They had a negotiation with him last year. I just think that they've planned for this, and this is something that they have been, I think open with his people that they wanted to get something done throughout this offseason. So my guess would be Jordan Love would be the next one, but Tua could certainly happen first. And the interesting thing about Tua is they've been planning for it too. And if you look at like some of the things they've done, letting Christian Wilkins walk, cutting Jerome Baker, cutting Xavier Howard, they've done a lot of things to clear the decks for Tua to get a big second contract. So I think both of those will get done, maybe right around the beginning of training camp or maybe a little bit before then, with the Dak situation probably lingering a little longer.
So what do you think? Do either of these join the $50 million APY club here, Albert? Because there's only 5 of those guys right now in the NFL, with Goff slated 2 in that regard now.
I think one way or the other, all 3 of those guys make it into the $50 million club. I just think it's kind of gotten to the point where it's the price of doing business. You saw what Kirk Cousins got, $45 million per. I just think even if like the compromise is, well, like give us a break on the guarantees in year 3 or year 4, I do think that these guys are going to make it into that category. And so my guess would be, I don't know if any of those 3 that we've talked about will make it to what Burrow got. But I think all of them will be between 50 and what Burrow got. And, and I just think that's sort of where the market's gone. Again, like I think as good as Jared Goff is, I think, like those guys could look at it. And I think Tua could absolutely ask for more than Goff because this is his second contract. This is his chance to hit it big. And he did get the Dolphins to the playoffs. And I think if you're Dak, you certainly ask for more than Jared Goff got. And my guess would be Jordan Love will wind up in that category as well.
And so let's just dive into Dak a little bit more here, Albert, because listen, the price only goes up the longer you wait. I mean, that's obvious. It's 100% obvious, and I'm sure it's 100% obvious to Jerry Jones as well. And the same thing with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, at some point, Justin Jefferson's going to get the bag. You know, like it's going to arrive finally in Minnesota. It's going to happen. They're not going to let him walk. Not with J.J. McCarthy. Just got a rookie. You know, they got a J.J. to throw to him. You know what I mean? So it's only gonna be a matter of time. So what is it? Does he really want to see Dak Prescott get to the NFC Championship game before he signs him again, fully knowing that if he does wait even that long, he's now entering a new cycle of quarterbacks that could beat Joe Burrow, who might get beaten by either one of these guys, Jordan Love or Tua, who knows? You know what I mean? Like, is that really what's at stake here with this?
I mean, I think like the crazy thing is this is a rake that Jerry Jones keeps stepping on. You know what I mean? Like, now there are examples of having done deals early, but those turned out great for the Cowboys. Like Tyron Smith is an excellent example of like where they went in early with Tyron Smith, who's probably a Hall of Fame left tackle, and they wound up keeping him at a reasonable rate for the entirety of his time with the Dallas Cowboys, which was 13 years, you know, right up until this offseason when he leaves for the Jets. When they've waited, it's cost them. It cost them with Zach Martin. It cost them with DeMarcus Lawrence. It cost them with Des Bryant. And so it just feels like they're back in one of those situations where, you know, if you're the player and you've waited this long and they've taken you into a contract year, which with both CeeDee and Dak they've done, well, you know, now you're going to ask for more. It's almost the reverse of what the Eagles have done. Like the Eagles have done great business by getting things done early, right? Like they're constantly getting in front of these things. And that's why, like, if you look at the Eagles over the years, like they have like these deals that seem to mature into really good deals for the team. Now they look like huge money when the players get paid, right? But, you know, like they paid Jalen Hurts almost right away when he became eligible for a deal. Devontae Smith this offseason got paid right away. A.J. Brown, they went in and redid his deal when they probably didn't have to. The Eagles have been very aggressive right there in their division.
Yeah, and even when it backfires, like Wentz, they figure out a way to get around it. And obviously Jalen Hurts helped in that process, you know, but that's why it just is a total head scratcher when you know that you have to sign the other people. And if you make some sort of a much more cap friendlier deal because you have extended, then you can afford every. I really.
What about that? What about this? What about what you wait for Jordan Love? Like, do you think Dak Prescott's going to take less than Jordan Love?
Of course not. Even though the fact that we're in this predicament, if you will, that the predicament that we're discussing occurred because Jordan Love one and done to Dak. And that reaction that Jones has had to that has led to this conversation that I think is a legitimate one to have, to be honest with you. All of this stuff, and I know a lot of fans, Albert, might be sitting here thinking, you know what? Well, you know, it's all generationally enriching money. Like, what does it matter? Because you build rosters based off of all this. Like we're getting to the point where we'll be nearing, unless the cap goes up appreciably, maybe a quarter of your cap will be given to a quarterback that may or may not have only 2-3 career playoff appearances, let alone wins, you know? And that's the way that we're doing business, with a bunch of backups that don't have time to get up to speed because they don't have the practice time due to the collective bargaining agreement that led to a lot of this stuff. And that's the way that the NFL, whoever figures out that Rubik's Cube the best, will have the best chance to, you know, win it all. Like, that's the answer.
That's part of why I brought up the example of Jared Goff in Los Angeles. Is that the way that they're starting to view Dak now, where it's like, you know, Goff, like, is this now Goff in 2020? Is Dak in 2024, where it's like, we love him, but is he going to be able to put us over the top? Can we rely on him to be that guy who is making all of that money and can make up the difference with his play? You know, some of those questions getting asked can lead you to be hesitant and trigger shy as far as, you know, getting a deal done. So But again, like, what generally pushes things across the goal line with quarterbacks is like what's behind door number two. And what's behind door number two here is a franchise tag number that, believe it or not, for 2025 would be nearly $80 million. So you're not going to franchise tag him. So he's going to become a free agent. And then you're at the mercy of the market. And oh, by the way, if you're at the mercy of the market, you've probably also pissed your player off to the point where if he can get something equal somewhere else, is he going somewhere else for a similar price instead of staying with you just because he doesn't like the fact that he was dragged out over the last couple of years? There's a lot of those dynamics at work here. And, it's, again, I think it's a fascinating situation. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to find some compromise again before camp, but obviously the price has gone way up because the Cowboys have waited.
Last one for you, Albert Breer. The first ever offseason Hard Knocks got announced. Who knew that NFL Films had been embedded with the Giants since the minute the Giants season ended? Let's just say there's no John Mara, Joe Shane goalie standing in the crease here. Okay. What do you think? What would we find out about what? Like, what do you think we'd find out about here, Albert?
So I'm going to give you a fun one. So I know but like the people listening, watching know what a 30 visit is, right? So the NFL teams have the power to bring in 30 guys pre-draft, right? So you bring in 30 guys before the draft to your facility. You take them out to dinner the night before. And then you have a full day of meetings with them. You can give them a physical, all that different stuff. No workout, but you can do a bunch of different things with meetings and tests and all that different stuff the next day. So what I would want to see is there was a 30 visit where 3 guys were on that visit together. Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze were all on their 30 visit together. And additionally, I've heard Malik Neighbors, who wound up with the Giants, took this whole thing as a massive competition, right? Like the whole pre-run up to the draft, everything else, it pissed him off that people thought Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze were better than him. So I actually heard that he ran his second 40 at LSU, his pro day, right? So he runs a 4.3. Most guys, and you know this, Rich, you've covered the combine forever. If you run well on your first 40, what do you do generally?
You stop.
You don't run a second one, right?
Right.
I heard he ran his second 40 to LSU's pro day as a shot at Marvin Harrison for not doing anything before the draft. And I heard that with one team, he referred to Marvin Harrison as the guy from Ohio State rather than by his name. So there was definitely like a little competitive thing going on there, at least on Malik Neighbors' side. So I would love if they had any sort of footage. And I'm not saying the guys don't get along or whatever. I'm sure they're cordial and everything else. But I would just love to see what that looked like. Having 3 guys who are competing with each other directly for draft position in Neighbors, Odunze, and Harrison out to dinner together somewhere in New Jersey, and then in the building together on their 30 visit. I don't know if they'll show us that, but that would be one thing that would be great to see.
Well, it's interesting that's where you went, because the fact that Neighbors is a Giant is born out of the fact that apparently they couldn't get Drake May, and they couldn't get the Patriots to buy.
That's the other thing I'd love to see.
That I want to see that, and then what does that mean for Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, and is there a valuation of the quarterbacks that are still left there in any way, shape, or form informed by their attempts to get May or kick the tires on J.J. McCarthy and all that stuff? Now,
I don't think you would see. I don't think you would see. Like, I could totally understand why you wouldn't want to show the private conversations that Joe Shane or Brian Daboll are having with Daniel Jones, but if they could somehow give us a window into how the Giants were handling their aggressive evaluation of the quarterbacks and the potential move up for Drake May, if Hard Knocks could somehow show us how the Giants were massaging that with Daniel Jones, that would be fascinating, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Like and like telling, like being like, how upfront are they with him? What are they telling him exactly? That would be something that'd be incredible. Now, I totally understand if the Giants don't want to show that,
That's what, yeah.
Because those are private conversations and everything else. But that would be one thing that I think would be really, really interesting. And then, of course, like, who wouldn't want to see the last phone calls that Joe Shane and his staff are making to the Patriots to try to get up to 3, and how close that got, right? Like, I think that would be fascinating. Like, my understanding was they put their first round pick, the 6th overall pick this year, and then next year's first rounder on the table to try and get him. Obviously they fell short. The Vikings tried to move up to 3 to get Drake May too. Anything we could see, anything they could show their effort to move up would be really, really interesting too. Again, in addition to how they were massaging all of that with Daniel Jones.
Albert, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciate your 2 cents here. And just real quick, Susan and I appreciated your words on X yesterday as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. That was a great message from you guys, honestly. And I really want to make sure people don't like take that as anything against stay-at-home moms. I know some great people that have chosen that. I'm lucky enough to, be able to give my wife the choice. And, she's chosen to do a job that's way more important than mine. And I am so grateful that my children get to see that example. It's it's as valuable or more valuable than her being around for those hours that she's away. And I had that experience with my mom too, and having a working mom set just a great example for me and my brother. And not only like in that she was setting an example of how hard she worked to make everything work for us and also be a great parent, but also like we didn't have a sister, so for me and my brother to, have that example of, of a woman who could do that sort of thing, who could pull that off, I think, certainly gives you, an idea of how you view gender dynamics and everything else. So right. I appreciate you giving me the time to say that, Rich.
You got it, brother. And you want to let everyone know what your wife does? They may not know.
Yeah, she's a cardiac. I'm very proud of this. She's a nurse in the cardiac ICU at Boston Children's Hospital. So like I said, her job is way more important than mine, for sure.
There you go.
Mic drop. I mean, like, honestly, like, it's so impressive. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so great because she had a choice, and it's just wonderful. Yep. So I just want everyone to be able to make their own choices for themselves.
Thank you, Albert Breer. You're the man. Yep. Be well.
Thanks,
have a good weekend. As always, Albert Breer here.
Bye, Albert. Great to see you.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.